anything that's right that can help our team, Jay, yes. Yes, I would not flinch. I don't know. I say this on the golf course. I'm a lot of things, but scared ain't one of them.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus YouTube channel presented by Connors and Ferris, Mike Catalana, along with Dan Fates here in Indianapolis. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. We're having fun in Indy. We are getting a ton of content that will be coming your way over the next week or two leading up, so we will talk about that. But today, Dan, we got a chance to talk with Brandon Beane, the Bills general manager, holding his news conference here and then talking to him later about a lot of things, including Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, we talked about it, I think, our first day when we came to Indy and said, look, we're going to come here, we're going to talk about draft picks, we're going to talk about prospects, and we will get to all of that. But the NFL draft is 2 months away. NFL free agency, though, on the other hand, begins in about 3 weeks. So Brandon Beane and the Bills need to make decisions on their players before they start making decisions on bringing new ones in. And this was a prime example of signing Khalil Shakir to a 4-year extension worth a reported $60 million. And Mike, I love this deal because I think both sides do very well with the money.
Yeah. Shakir's getting the contract he probably deserves, or maybe even a little bit higher of a number based on his stats.
And correct, because his value's higher than his stats.
Absolutely, and it certainly is value to the team. But if you're Shakir, you're going into that 4th year. He's a 5th-round pick. So in NFL terms, he hasn't been paid yet.
Correct.
Now he's getting paid.
Correct.
This is the first time he's getting paid. And I know they don't prioritize in a way of saying, he's our best player, he's a second. But a little bit on these guys, it does feel a little bit like we get this one out of the way now, and then you see what happens with the other players.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're talking about James Cook, Terrell Bernard, and Benford. Oh, obviously, Christian Benford. In terms of that. And some of it may come down to, can they get a deal done early?
Yeah, I just like this move. Again, I think the money works best, like we're talking about. Khalil Shakir is a great wide receiver. He is so well respected in Buffalo for his play. Sean always calls him a football player. Like, that's the nuts and bolts. Brandon Beane talks about him today about the fact that he is Mr. Dependable, that he's a Buffalonian, even though he's not from Buffalo. He's embodied what this team has kind of wanted to be in that identity. And for Shakir, so you get him for about $15 million a year. And for Shakir, you're getting that deal, and you've never had a 1,000-yard season. So it's a good deal for him. He's getting the money, and it is value. I think I saw somewhere it's about like the 23rd highest paid wide receiver. It is a good deal, I think, on both sides. I really like that. And again, now you see what else happens. Some deals are easier to make than others. Some sides are easier to negotiate than others. I thought it was a slam dunk.
Yeah, and that's why numbers are important. But not all numbers, because any Bills fan knows Shakir is, like you said, more valuable to the team than the numbers he's put up so far. In fact, I got a chance to talk one-on-one with Brandon Beane and started with a question about Khalil Shakir. All right, Brandon, you get Khalil Shakir signed. Was there a moment you can think back, a specific moment, where you thought to yourself, I think this kid's going to be with us for a long time?
You know, he's made some big plays. He's one of those guys, sneaky out of nowhere, but you think about that in the playoffs his rookie year against the Dolphins, he went down and made a great catch across the field. The Jets game a year ago, it looked like 3 different times he was going to be tackled. The Pittsburgh game, in the playoffs a year ago, he kind of Houdini'd his way out of there and scores a touchdown. He's just one of those guys you're like, if you pause the play sometimes, you're like, there's no way he's going to score here. And he's just got that innate ability, and he's just so well respected and loved in our locker room, obviously in the Buffalo community, and you love to see guys like that rewarded.
All right, so he made a lot of plays. Your offense made a lot of plays. Josh Allen wins the MVP. It's the everybody eats. But that being said, do you ever feel like there's still too much on Josh in terms of what is expected of him week to week to week? This is my way of trying to ask you, are you going to go out and get him a big, strong, fast wide receiver this year?
Well, I mean, I think every year's got its own nuances. Every team, you build it, and last year's motto was that because we didn't have a number one. Are we going to turn down the talent of a number one if it's sitting there in the draft or free agency that can fit within our cap constraints and all that? Ultimately, I think Josh, this was the year that I think was less on him this year, and he did a great job with it. I think there's been years where he's had more on his shoulders, and some of that came with a balanced running game. And we've put a lot into making sure our line is not only good at protecting, but can open up holes in the run game. And you saw that with, I thought, all three backs, not only James, but the other two, when their opportunities, were there, they took advantage.
You did establish an identity, really, on offense. It feels like you've been doing that for a couple of years. You became more physical. You can run the ball. On the defensive side, you guys have always been good. But does it feel like you almost have to reestablish an identity on defense going forward? You mentioned the game's changed a lot in the way you play. Do you feel that, or do you don't think it's at that level where you have to reestablish that on the defensive side?
Yeah, I think you're always trying to make sure you bring a nastiness, not nothing illegal, but you want to be physical. What's that? And remember the Titans. I was watching that lately. It's like you want to know when the day they're going to remember the day they played the Titans. And so when people get done playing the Buffalo Bills, you want to know, you want them to know, man, I was in for a physical battle. It took me a couple of days to get over that game when I played because they were fast, physical, just a smart, tough team to deal with. And so you're constantly looking for those pieces. And yes, some years it's chemistry. When you put a unit together or a team together, it's not only their physical talent, but how do they match and work together as teammates. And after each season, you evaluate what worked, what didn't, what tweaks do we need to make.
All right. Thanks very much, Brandon Beane, Bills General Manager.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, he's talking about the defense and what they need to do. Look, I don't think it's any big secret that that's part of their revamping of this defense.
Yeah.
They've used words like nastiness and
Toughness, yeah.
all that kind of thing. I think they survived on turnovers last year. They are skilled players at that. But that is tough to continue to do and to do and to do. I do think you will see a different look of this defense in 2025 because Sean McDermott wants it, Brandon Beane wants it.
I liked how they've both used by themselves, when we talked to them in the media, a nastiness.
Yeah.
And maybe there was a lacking of a little bit of that these last few seasons. So I like that thought of getting back to that. That's an identity. And when he talked about the fact with you, Mike, of quoting the Remember the Titans.
Yes.
And kind of going, I want them to remember how it feels. The Detroit Lions didn't have a good defense by the end of the year, but they were a nasty physical team that would wear you down. We've seen it before a lot of times. Because I thought it was interesting when he talked about it takes a few days to recover. The Baltimore Ravens have been a team that will beat you up.
Pittsburgh Steelers have been that kind of team.
And it wears on you the following week. You see trends across the NFL. Teams, after they played the Lions this year, they weren't as good.
Yeah.
They had a bad record because they took a toll out of you. I love the thought of the Bills being that kind of team that you will feel them after you've played them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moves they need to make. We will get to some of that we talked about. But in terms of getting Khalil Shakir signed is an important thing. Revamping maybe the wide receiver position, depending on what they're doing. Of course, I asked him, obviously, about a number one guy.
Yeah.
He's not going to turn it down.
Yeah.
I hope not, because maybe that's what they'll end up doing.
And the other guy that obviously everybody was talking about was James Cook.
Yeah.
So it was James Cook. And I thought his bites at the podium, I thought were perfect. He said, I love James. He's a beautiful person. And he goes on. And he goes, it comes down to the fact that business is business. And he added, I wish business would stay in the building. He goes, but James is a grown man. He can do what he wants. It does not change the way that I view him, which I think was the right way. We have seen GMs step on the rake when they go, I don't like that the player did that. Look, Beane doesn't have to love everything that James Cook does. He's a grown man. He can tweet and post about whatever he wants.
And really, what did he do?
He posted that he wants some money. Oh, darn.
Yeah. I mean, he wants the money. I think his
This
timing
league-
was a little off.
Yes.
Because it's way too early. Because
Yes.
a lot of running backs around and in the draft and everything. But Beane handles that like a veteran general manager.
And he says he doesn't negotiate in the media. So as much as we tried to lean about, we even asked him, where are the negotiations at?
Yeah.
And he goes, I have a great relationship with James, all of these things. That's as far as they're going to go. Again, I think they can let this play out for a little bit.
And that's because it has to be both sides. I mean, look, I think they want to get Christian Benford done.
Yep.
But Christian Benford also knows that out there for him is the possibility of him playing this out and putting the team in a position of franchising him and all those things. If he plays the way I think they believe he can play, that's out there for him.
They can do the same thing with James.
Yes. He could have done the same thing with Khalil Shakir, too, but I don't know if you'd put the franchise tag on Shakir.
Correct.
But it does work both ways in that case. So there are decisions to make, and it has to be together.
Trivia question. Last player the Bills have franchise tagged is...
Oh.
We just looked this up. Cordy Glenn.
It was Cordy Glenn, the
Mike
offensive
nailed it.
lineman.
Nailed
Yes,
it.
thank you.
Jenna looked that up before our
Part
last
of
podcast.
the deal that eventually became Josh Allen. Yes.
How about that?
So that was a smart move. They franchised Cordy, and he ended up bringing them Josh Allen.
Yeah, well done.
Oh, by the way, they spent a lot of money, and this is for the future years, but, because
The cap.
Okay, so they have to get under the cap for the deadlines. I need to spell something out to a few people about the cap and our official Buffalo Plus take on it, which is
The salary cap
is
is
not real. Now, there are people out there, look, I get it, they stick to their narrative of this is what we're told, this is what it is, and I get it.
We don't want to get locked on it.
Yeah, you can't get locked on that kind of stuff because you have to understand the nuance.
The nuance. I think that's the big thing. You can't get fixated on it because of the nuance that it is. The fact that if the salary cap was so real, you wouldn't be able to make 3 moves going from $15 million over the cap to $15 million under the cap.
Now, just so we're clear here, when we say that, we mean it is an entity that can be manipulated by a team. Right next to Brandon Beane speaking today was Howie Roseman.
Yes.
It's nice that the NFL doesn't make them follow the cap, right?
Correct.
Because they seem to figure out a way to do it.
Every single player in Philadelphia is top 5 at their position, and they find a way to be under the cap.
Okay.
It's incredible.
It does take some movements. It also takes drafting well. It takes re-upping the right players, making up for mistakes when you need to.
And
like
winning.
all of those things. Well,
winning.
yes.
Because when you do that, your owner is more likely to shell out money to keep those good players and restructure things.
Right, because it does take that. It takes the cash. You are kicking the can down the road.
But if you win and you don't need a quarterback, you can continue to restructure deals all the way through. Because percentages or dollar signs, whatever you want to say, Josh is underpaid in the terms of salary cap.
Right.
Well, they're going to rip his contract up, whether it's this year or next year, and he's going to get a new one. And then when the salary cap, breaking news, in 2026, the salary cap's gone up.
It's crazy.
So-
It's almost like they just created space.
Which is what
Lest we be misunderstood,
Again.
we do understand football, and we know that the cap, the way it is talked about and the way it is used to weaponize moves teams make is comical to me. They do not have salary cap casualties.
There has never been a GM that has cut a player that he wanted to keep. It's just never happened in the history of the NFL.
For salary cap, right,
reasons.
because they want to keep them. There are times when there is a
Trey
player.
White was not a salary cap casualty. He couldn't.
Right.
He wasn't the player that he was.
But there are also players who do really well. I'll use Josh Sweat of the Eagles as an example. Did really well in the Super Bowl, 2.5 sacks, they won the game. He's going to get overpaid by somebody this year. I think a team like the Eagles is going to say, we've already drafted well, we have some younger defensive ends, and we're going to move on. Teams have been doing that before there was a salary cap. So I just felt I needed to say that.
I think it's making it clear. Saying the salary cap is not real is a fun bit, and it is a lot shorter way of explaining the nuances between the escrow that you have to put in by the owners, the way that you have to front load money, the way that you have to set money aside, the way that you can manipulate contracts, all of those things. Even though Brandon Beane may hold a mug up that says Dan is wrong, I am very, very confident that I know that this salary cap is not real.
Yeah. And look, when you make mistakes, you got to pay for it in some way.
Bad contracts and dead money are a real thing.
Right.
But it's not, every team somehow, shockingly, is under the cap.
Yeah.
No team has ever been not allowed to play football because they weren't under the cap.
Well, I'm glad I got that out. And we did.
Keon Coleman.
Yeah, so here's a case where you drafted a guy in the second round, your first pick. And we've talked about it. We talked about it with Sean McDermott. They aren't happy with where he is.
Yes.
And Brandon Beane talked about it.
And I thought you gave Sean a great opportunity yesterday in the one-on-one that we did with him. Also check out that video, like, comment, subscribe. The fact of, hey, yeah, we need him to be better, but it's not like they have given up. I think there's a difference between sending a message and kind of calling a guy out without saying we're not giving up on him. We just have expectations that he needs to be there. We heard a lot of the same thing from Brandon Beane today. One, he talks about, hey, he's 21 years old.
Yep.
And all of these kind of things. Well, I'll let Brandon Beane give his answer to the question of where is Keon Coleman and how do you see him moving forward?
Keon, I agree with Sean. I said that same thing at my end of season presser, that I thought Keon was really trending up, and he got the unfortunate hit on his wrist in the Miami game, and probably didn't reach to the peak that he was at pre-injury. But again, Keon Coleman's 21 years old. Like, we shouldn't expect all these guys. Some of these guys playing and that were drafted last year were 24 and 25, and so let's give him a chance. Let's don't beat him up. It's his first season, and let's don't forget about the good things that Keon made some plays for us, made some big plays. Are there some plays he would want back? Sure. Are there some things he needs to do better? Yes. But I know, talking to him even since the season's ended, talking to his representative who he's living by, that he's grinding, he's working, and he's a competitive young man. That's the thing we knew about him in the research, and I have no doubt that he's going to come back with a refreshed mindset and ready to, if there are doubters, to prove them wrong.
It's the same message in a different tone. It's the same thing of we need him to be better. There were moments of flashes of good things.
Right.
Let's not forget about those things. I thought Beane tiptoed and played the right notes today off of what has already been said in the media that they've said in the media of we need more.
Yeah. Well, let's also look at this. Yes, he's a young player. Yes, he has time to develop in a certain way. But the clock's ticking on the Buffalo Bills in terms of, like, they're really good,
Yep.
and they need him to be good, and they can't sit around and wait. So I don't think they'll sit around this offseason thinking we're all set there, right?
Correct.
I mean, you heard me ask him about getting a number one guy or a guy that can play to those positions. And then if Keon comes around, that's great. They need him, but they don't want to have to depend on him unless he shows a lot more.
And a video, and it'll come out more, all of the content that we got, which has been awesome today, grabbing tons of draft content, national analyst content. We caught up with NBC's Chris Sims today, and we were talking about Keon Coleman. It echoed kind of what Sean said about young players yesterday, about the fact of we will know when they come in if they put in the work.
Yeah.
And if they put the rubber meets the road kind of thing. Chris Sims talked about that same thing, and he talked about how important trust is between a quarterback and a wide receiver. And he goes, it's just so much chaos. You have to go back and trust that you're running the routes the way that we ran them in practice and the way that where I'm expecting you to be.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, you really don't have any type of connection or any chance to be successful.
Yeah, and Josh is good enough to find somebody else to throw the ball, to make plays, to do it with his legs, but he shouldn't have to.
Yep.
Like, if he's got a guy like that, he should be able to
Yeah.
depend on him, and if not, somebody else is going to be in the spot.
Yeah, so we'll have that Chris Sims, the full interview with him. He also called Josh Allen one first ballot Hall of Famer. Awesome
one of the
stuff.
all-time great quarterbacks.
And one more one was about talking to Beane about being aggressive.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody tries to find a way to talk about Myles Garrett.
Yes.
And we all know Brandon Beane is not allowed to say, I love Myles Garrett as a player. Like,
I didn't.
Yeah.
It just hit me that this question was pretty much about.
Yeah.
That just hit me.
Is trading for Myles Garrett, right? Or I guess you could say,
Garrett Wilson.
Yeah. Yes. That one might be a little different in terms of in the division, but in terms of, Crosby or anybody else that you could make available. But he was asked because part of that might be, listen, it would be probably if you're making that deal, it's for a number one pick.
Yes.
It's got to be part of it. And he was asked about, would you be willing to make those kind of moves, including your number one pick, to get the guy you want to get?
Anything that's right that can help our team, Jay, yes. Yes, I would not flinch. I don't know, I say this on the golf course, I'm a lot of things, but scared ain't one of them. And so, yes, anything that can help our roster that can fit and not cripple us in another way, yes, we would definitely do it. Those conversations, I swear they happen all year long, like other than maybe July. Whether it's, is a guy for trade or you're finding out they may trade him, but he could be a cap casualty. Whatever it is, we're trying to monitor it. Can I monitor every single one by myself? Not necessarily, but I have a staff, and they're doing it, and they're keeping a pulse, or they're checking with agents, or they're reaching out to their contact with Team X. Whether they see something on Twitter, whether they hear it in the scuttlebutt behind the scenes, if it's a player that we think would fit the Bills, we're going to check into it. I would say our name gets thrown out there a lot, and sometimes we're checking into it. No one will make the call. It's probably a long shot, but if you don't call, you don't know.
I've golfed with Brandon Beane. He ain't scared. He ain't ever scared.
He's a little scared watching you swing the club.
That's fair. Hey, Dan, I need you to hit a 163 shot if you can flight it down. Hey, Brandon, I'm just going to try and hit the green.
By the way, he's one of the rare people that says he's playing well in golf.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
a
when
lot
you know
of
you're
times
good.
even good golfers, though, will be like, yeah, I'm hitting it okay. He's like, yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
I'm getting it done. So good. He's had a little golf time. His golf time's over for a while. He's got work to do
Very busy.
to fix up the roster. All right. Anything else?
No, I think that was it.
And like Dan mentioned, we have plenty of other.
One more thing. Love Petty, Brandon Beane. We asked him about Josh Allen winning the MVP.
Oh, yeah.
He said not bad for a guy that was overrated
Yes.
at the start of the summer, saying how he went from overrated to MVP in a span of 6 months.
Yeah, that's a nice move for him. Yeah.
That is progress.
Yes.
That is growth.
Well, the way the NFL is, whoever it was that thought he was overrated probably thinks he's now overrated as the MVP.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's probably unemployed.
Yes.
If that's your evaluation of
I
talent.
believe Brandon said that day there are idiots everywhere.
There are idiots everywhere.
Oh, believe me, Dan and I know that.
There are idiots
Because some people
everywhere.
have some bad takes. Anyhow, that's going to do it for us. For Dan Fates and his phone that is ringing, I'm
We
Mike
got another
Catalana.
interview.
Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you the next time on the Buffalo Plus channel on YouTube.